Are you a good American? Amazingly, Newt Gingrich's book, Winning the Future, begins with a test to determine whether you are a good American. As he sees it, you could either agree with America's natural majority or be deluded by the secular liberalism of the left. Do you know where you stand? The quiz has 10 questions which you rate between 0, strongly disagree, and 10, strongly agree, based upon your agreement with each statement. As Gingrich calls it, the lower your total score, the more you disagree with America's natural majority. Now that your whole self-identity as an American is riding on your result, take Gingrich's quiz yourself. As you go through, pause each slide to answer the questions. Once you've completed the quiz, total your score. If it exceeds 51, then Gingrich rules that his book is for you, as it is about how you can protect and defend America's traditions and values. However, regardless of your quiz score, I invite you to read my book as an informative analysis of political issues that may help you connect the dots and perhaps check the validity of some of your own premises. To begin, let's briefly analyze Gingrich's quiz questions as a prelude. In his selection of quiz questions, Gingrich made explicit and implicit disclosures about the values and thinking processes that drive his political decisions. The primary theme of these questions is majoritarianism. Secondarily, there is a strong trend of mysticism. Finally, particular questions express rationalism and pragmatism. Within the penumbra of these themes, traditionalism and altruism are implicit. The political ideas expressed by Gingrich throughout his book conglomerate these more fundamental ideas in context according to a predictable hierarchy. Throughout all the quiz questions, majoritarianism is the dominant ideology, by which I mean the belief that majority opinion should determine government policy without being limited by individual rights. Gingrich demonstrates this orientation by his citing positive poll numbers between 73% and 92% agreement as validation that these positions reflect the opinion of what he calls America's natural majority. Further, he segregates policy dissidents outside this natural majority. In addition, Gingrich devotes an entire chapter to criticizing efforts by the Supreme Court to protect minorities from oppression by the majority will as expressed by the legislature. Even his other ideological orientations are substantiated by reference to majority opinion. Meanwhile, these other ideas operate within a limited domain. Making value judgments according to majoritarianism is a disposition which Gingrich shares with the secular liberals of the left, who he claims to oppose. The similarity is that both sides commit the fallacy of the primacy of consciousness, whereby reality is a creation of consciousness independent of external existence. The difference being that Gingrich accepts a collection of ideas integrated as a system of limited domain, but which is not connected to actual reality, the domain of all existence. For example, traditionalism collects lessons from history but disconnects them from their references to reality, and mysticism collects a system of ideas related to God, which Gingrich holds as disconnected and superior to reality. Meanwhile, for issues beyond the domain of God and tradition, Gingrich relies upon the momentary whim of the majority as the arbiter of value. At the most basic level of what is metaphysics, Gingrich's first 3 quiz questions advocate mysticism, by which I mean a belief in a supernatural reality perceived only by supernatural means. In Gingrich's case, this alternate reality provides superior knowledge to our common, actual, and naturally perceived reality. This contradicts the position that reality is knowable through man's faculty of reason and is in fact in opposition to it. Essentially, although government on Earth operates solely within the domain of perceived reality, Gingrich presumes that supernatural knowledge supersedes the actual facts of reality, which contradicts the reality-focused theories of Republican theorists like Machiavelli and John Adams. On the question of how we acquire knowledge, epistemology, Gingrich's next 4 quiz questions advocate rationalism, by which I mean the deduction of new knowledge from pre-existing concepts which were not induced from perceptions of reality. In Gingrich's case, the pre-existing concepts come from God, tradition, or the opinions of the majority. These specific questions appeal to nativism, that America is an intrinsic good, without reference to the facts in reality supporting American exceptionalism and the principles that apply equally to all countries. To determine what actions should be taken, ethics, Gingrich's last 3 questions advocate pragmatism. Government action related to each of these questions presupposes a violation of a fundamental individual right. Instead of advocating the justice of defending rights tied to reality as a requirement for man to live as man, Gingrich pragmatically acts without principle according to majority whim. Part of this orientation is derived from the implicit doctrine of altruism, otherism, choosing to sacrifice self to others, which is a corollary of Gingrich's flavor of mysticism. Those questions associated with rationalism also put traditionalism as the guide to action. In summary, Newt Gingrich exhibits a complex set of contradictory beliefs dealing with questions of what is, how does he know it, and what should he do about it. As each of these sets of ideas applies to different domains, he applies a hierarchy to determine which apply to a given situation. First, God gets what mysticism has claimed for him. Otherwise, tradition applies when the judgment of ancestors can substitute for thinking. And finally, in cases where other guidance does not exist, majority whim is applied pragmatically, without principle, and through trial and error. I will be posting more about my book as it comes to completion at concedingthefutureblogspot.com.